So there's a whole chapter in the book called Go Shop, which basically looks at like our consumer choices we're faced with. So I think the best thing we can do is begin to sort of ask a set of questions behind the things we buy. So, if we pick something up in the supermarket that's like a tomato, let's say, like, where was that grown? Was it grown like within Europe? Was it grown in South America? Like, how far did it travel to get to us, and how can we shorten those miles so that like there are less emissions? What was the conditions of the workers working on that farm, or was it grown kind of organically or not? And then kind of the packaging that's in, and can we recycle that? So it's always about asking a series of questions and knowing when to compromise. If you're able to buy something from less far away, but it's not ideally in the best packaging as possible, maybe your win in that product is that it wasn't from far away and it was more local. Essentially, it's mainly about sort of materials, I guess, the growing, extracting, like the manufacturing processes, and then is that new? Is it secondhand? What's the afterlife of that product? Or if it is food, like how can I make sure I don't waste it and store it properly when I get home? So there's many different questions. Go Shop was one of the hardest chapters for me to write in the book, and Go Learn, the first chapter, just because there's just so much information out there and there's so much nuance to it. And I think we also are faced a lot with consumers with a lot of kind of advertising and greenwashing, and we have to kind of like navigate that. So sometimes it can feel like a bit of a exhausting experience sometimes when you go to the supermarket and you're trying to make the right choice. But I think compromise and just knowing little wins are great. And, the whole thing doesn't have to be, again, this perfect idea of like making the right choice.
Yeah. And can you remember the first step you took, the first thing you're like, this is a thing I can change in my life right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think as simple as like a reusable water bottle. Obviously we are fortunate and lucky to have access to, running water in our kitchen, and being able to refill my bottle instead of buying plastic water bottle. That was a kind of simple, obvious step. And it was really when I began to start working with Greenpeace actually directly and going on the first trip I took with them back in sort of 2018, did I really begin to, I think take it up this kind of level from being something I was just concerned about to actively doing something about in my day-to-day life. And that was from that trip, just in terms of just being inspired by the campaigners and being empowered again that the choices I was making individually did matter, and they did help me to connect me to these large issues that I felt quite disempowered to think, my voice would make any difference. And so for me, these kind of individual actions that I kind of, obviously the whole book of Go Gently is about, was sort of my coping mechanism to feel a little bit more centered and more like I could weave myself back into this story that felt quite overwhelming.
And it is kind of a broad, overwhelming thing. And I think a lot of people feel that kind of the hopelessness about it, the kind of like, well, I can't do anything, I can't affect change. So with obviously you being in the public eye, do you think about it differently? Is there another level? Do you think, well, I have some platform, I have to do something with it?
Well, I think, obviously the privilege of the platform to amplify these messages can kind of be increased by, my ability to speak to a lot of people, which is exciting to be able to have that opportunity. But I also think, why I chose to write my book about individual kind of intimate at-home actions rather than like the other angle of a book I could have written, which was more about kind of, activism and sort of like public-facing actions. This is really about private kind of internal actions, because to me, everyone can do that. And the things that I sort of look at and I'm drawn to are things that are for everyone. And I wrote the book more particularly about individual action because government change and big kind of corporate change can be a very long kind of journey, and it can be sometimes like you'd require a lot of patience in that work. So for me, I needed to be doing something rather than waiting for that kind of change to happen. I'm more interested in trying to like create this narrative that, everyone is welcome to these ideas, and how do we make people not feel like they're intimidated by a movement? Like that would be the worst thing if someone was intimidated by a movement, when a movement needs everyone to kind of participate and be a part of it to be as strong as it can be.
Do you and your husband kind of align on all of on all of this, on your opinions about the climate crisis, but also in terms of those changes to make. And have there been any things that one of you's been like a little bit more reluctant than the other to try?
Luckily, yeah, we're pretty aligned when it comes to all of these things. Sometimes we can be faced with like consumer choices of going to the supermarket, and I'm like, no, like, I don't think we should buy that because of X, Y, Z. He's like, I just want it, you know? And then vice versa. I can do things, and he's like, I don't know if that's quite what you'd suggest to other people. So it's fun to like catch each other out and like find the humor in it too, I think. You know, when sometimes you can get a bit stuck on or obsessing over this thing, to have someone else like, okay, I think that's like enough. Let's take a bit of a breather from that.
And what did he think of your early attempts at homemade toothpaste?
Yeah, I think I like slowly like just hid them from him until I like made it good. Sometimes he's like, in the winter it gets like colder and it's like more solid, and he's like, oh, I just can't, this is like, you know, you're like, he's like attacking it with the toothbrush. In the summer months it has like a better consistency because it's like warmer, but you know, he gets down with it, I guess, unless he wants to go buy his own toothpaste.
And one of the things you talk about in the book is racism that comes with the climate crisis. So can you explain a little bit about how racism and the environmental movement and the climate crisis sort of all interact?
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, often it's called like climate justice, the idea within looking at how disproportionately people are affected due to their race, due to their kind of socioeconomic situation. Whether that's, for example, a simple thing of, you know, a manufacturing processing site that maybe is quite toxically expelling different fumes could be purposefully, you know, built in a lower income community because they probably have maybe less power to complain or get them out of that neighborhood. And what has been so interesting for me to learn, and I think so many people to learn who have been in a privileged position when they're looking at kind of their role, is just how complex the issues are and how we can't overlook people. And I think, you know, when we look at phrases like save the planet, I often try and not use that phrase ever because I think that kind of doesn't put people into the story, and they are central to the story. And the people who are already on the front lines of the climate crisis are predominantly not white people. So looking at why that's happening and making sure that when we implement solutions, we don't repeat those kind of sort of colonial kind of racist ways of being and that kind of like white supremacist way of being. So even when you look at, you know, the mining of lithium batteries or the implementation of, you know, solar and wind energy, like that's not great unless it's accessible to everyone or unless we're actually thinking about the livelihoods of those people around kind of mining sites. So it's that that kind of people element to it, essentially.
And do you have a small change, another little small change in your life that you're looking to maybe implement or try out next?
Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah, this year I've been trying to get better at sewing. My mum's always been really good, and I got a sewing machine for my birthday like a year and a half ago. So I've been trying to do better at just like mending things or reimagining things that maybe I haven't been wearing for a while, or repurposing fabrics into other things. And I would love one day to have like a bit more space or connect with someone who did, whether that was like a community garden or something like that, and be more involved in gardening as a kind of community practice and not just something I'm doing at home on my own. Would be really fun. So yeah, I think those are two things.
Amazing. Well, Bonnie, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. And you're right when you say that the book has sort of little things so everyone can find what appeals to them, which is great.
Yeah, I hope so. Thanks
so much.
Thanks.